Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well and having a great Thursday. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm calling from Arlington, Virginia, where we're finally having our first non-humid day in what feels like forever. So hopefully those of you who have also been dealing with the heat are getting a little bit of relief as well. I'll wait a few more seconds for people to trickle in and then we'll get started. We have a quite a packed agenda today, so eager to dive in. All right, Jenna, I think we can advance to the next slide. So if this is your first WRI webinar, welcome. We are a global nonprofit, nonpartisan research organization working to improve people's lives, protect nature, and halt climate change. We have a team of around 2,000 staff in 13 offices around the world, working on topics like energy, water, forests, cities, food, and transportation. I will also note that this is the sixth webinar in our series on how local governments can influence energy system decision making. My colleague Ian will share the link to recordings from our past webinars in a second. I encourage you to look at those if you enjoy this one. Next slide. Today's agenda, like I said, is packed with quite a bit. So after I introduce our incredible speakers, I will provide a brief framing presentation and offer some guiding questions to ground the conversation. Then we will have a series of presentations from the Clean Energy Buyers Association, CEBA, Resurity, and the City of Reno. We will wrap up this webinar with a short Q&A at the end as well. Next slide. So to start off, I will introduce myself. My name is Liliana Gabriels. I'm a clean energy analyst with the World Resources Institute, and I am part of the U.S. Energy team, which sits within the Polsky Energy Center. Then we have Katie Southworth with the Clean Energy Buyers Association. She is the Deputy Director for Market and Policy Innovation in the South and Southeast. Prior to joining CEBA, Katie served as an advocacy director at South Face Institute. Katie's experience includes leading clean energy programs, climate policy development, and electricity system planning at the State of Tennessee office, as well as NRDC's Sustainable Federal Energy Regulatory Commission project. Wow, that's a mouthful. Next, I am pleased to introduce Mikhail Sheriff. He is a consultant focused on energy services, where he performs quantitative evaluation and analysis of renewable energy contracts. He specializes in accuracy of risk intelligence, helping stakeholders navigate the complexities of the clean energy economy. And finally, last but not least, Suzanne Groneman. She is the City of Reno Environmental Services Manager. She has worked in the energy and sustainability program and policy sector for over 14 years. Suzanne oversees the micro mobility, gas, electric, and water franchise agreements, their sustainability efforts, environmental stakeholder engagement, operational efficiency, and utility coordination, which includes all regulatory matters. Huge thank you to the three of you for joining me today. Next slide. So this leads me to my brief framing presentation on procurement pathways for large buyers. We can advance the slide and also start the poll. And as you all answer which of the below choices best describes your city's municipal clean energy goals, I will use this time to emphasize the importance of having different clean energy procurement options. Many cities have ambitious clean energy commitments. Hundreds of cities have adopted goals such as 100% renewable electricity for municipal operations, or even community-wide emissions reductions. And as you all know, setting the goal is only the first step. Local governments need practical procurement pathways to actually achieve them. Cities, counties, and other municipalities can be major energy consumers, and many clean energy procurement strategies provide long-term price certainty, helping local governments hedge against electricity price volatility while also reducing operating costs over time. And because no single procurement option works for every local government, we need options to best fit the priorities and capabilities of each community. With that being said, it looks like the poll results are back, and I think we can probably share them for everybody. Yes, I think we can. But it looks like it's kind of mixed with we have a 100% clean energy electricity goal, and we have broader climate goals, but no specific energy targets, which is quite interesting. Okay, so for the sake of time, we'll move to the next slide. So what are these procurement pathways I was talking about? I am sure many of you are familiar with them, but I want to briefly define a few of these while noting that the definition and details may vary significantly or slightly by state or utility. So a few of the ones I want to highlight is the green pricing, which is a utility program that allows customers to pay for electricity generated from renewable energy sources through their existing utility service. Community solar, a shared solar project that allows multiple customers to subscribe and receive credits on their electricity bills without installing solar on their actual property. And then green tariffs, which are green tariffs, also sleeved PPAs, which are utility supported procurement options that allow large customers to purchase renewable electricity through their utility. Green tariffs are utility renewable energy programs, while those sleeved PPAs use the utility to deliver power purchased from a third party renewable project. So the utility doesn't actually own the project. Virtual power purchase agreements, those are a financial contract in which a buyer supports a renewable energy project by agreeing to a fixed electricity price while continuing to purchase physical electricity from its local utility. And then lastly, the other one I'll highlight is the CCA, which is the Community Choice Aggregation, which is a program that allows local governments to purchase electricity on behalf of residents and local businesses while the utility continues to deliver power and maintain the grid. If you have any other questions on any of these, please feel free to put something in the Q&A function or contact us after the webinar. Okay, next slide. And also feel free to start the poll. So this poll just asks you to select all the procurement pathways your city has used before. This information is really, really helpful. It'll be helpful for us to frame the Q&A later, as well as plan for future webinars. So I'll just give it a minute before we show the results. But honestly, I think we can keep the poll up while we go to the next slide, just again for the sake of time. Amazing. So as I mentioned earlier, no single procurement option works for every local government. We need options to best fit the priorities and capabilities and capacities of each community. Here I have outlined some of the key decision factors that I encourage you to think about as we hear from our experts. Each option or pathway has its own cost and savings potential, contract complexity, additionality likelihood, market eligibility, risk, and term length. These are important considerations that impact your desired outcomes and influence your most pressing priorities as local governments. So I know I'm preaching a bit to the choir, but I always find a framing presentation helpful to guide us during a webinar so full of great information and technical insights. I also think we can go ahead and show that poll. It looks like what's leading is the on-site solar owned versus PPAs. I'm curious a bit if that's mostly PPAs or if that's mostly direct ownership. I should have included that. Oh, great. Next slide. You're ahead of me. Okay, so before I hand it over to Katie, I want to note some of the key questions we are asking today. The first one is, what are some of the procurement options available? Now, I wish we had time to cover them all. Sadly, I think that it would probably take the whole weekend. Number two, how are changing market conditions affecting options? Specifically, how has the phase out of those clean energy tax credits impacted the PPA market? And lastly, how have cities successfully combined multiple procurement pathways to achieve their goals? Yeah, all right, with the next slide, I say, Katie, take it away.
Awesome. I am really intrigued to see all the answers from the polling and look forward to the Q&A. Looks like nobody on this call is doing green tariffs, so here's my pitch. I'll introduce myself first. My name is Katie Southworth. I work with SEBA. We are an industry association of about 350 members and the largest corporate buyers in the country and on the planet. Our total market cap value of our customers is around $38 trillion. We have customers like retail, box chain stores, hospitality, all the way up to the hyperscaler data centers that you have been hearing so much about in the news lately. They're helping me earn my paycheck for sure. The amount of work we're doing in the clean tariff space with them. So we're based in DC. I am based in Nashville, and really what I do, just so you know who I am, I'm based in Nashville, come out of the state energy office background, as was mentioned before. But my day to day is trying to figure out how to get clean energy for my members with utilities across the South and Southeast, and which you may think is a tough market, but we have had some good wins and movement on the clean and green tariff side of late, which is what I'd like to talk to you about today. Next slide, please. So, I do want to sort of just caveat that if I go too deep on contract length and start talking terms, please don't be scared away by this. Reach out to me, and we're happy to work with a large, like y'all are buyers too. You're just not corporate buyers like my members. Happy to share, and learn from one another. If you do decide to look into clean and green tariffs. So what I'm hoping to impart on you today is, one, get you interested in to where you might answer that survey and do a clean tariff. I learned that latest trends that we're seeing in the clean energy tariff landscape. I can talk about sort of like the old school sort of traditional as well if you have questions later. Um, I'll share my reflections on key elements of building successful clean and green tariff programs based on years of eking it out with utilities and tariff and rate cases. Um, and then, we can talk in the Q&A about how to co-create elements for future clean tariffs that may suit your needs, as well as those of my members. All right, next slide, please. Here's a quick resource, and actually, Lily, these are not the latest slides that I've shared, so that's okay. I'm going to make sure that those are provided to everyone anyhow. But that we have this resource that's available to you. It is our latest green tariff update or clean tariff report update. If you go to the SEBA.org website, we have reports and catalogs of all utility green tariffs across the country. We are not checking the 77 large load tariffs that were introduced last year. Those are sort of coming out hot and heavy with the data center news. But if you want to find your utility, your state, what's available to you, we have a database on our website that you can go to, and it'll walk you through the options at a high level and tell you who to contact. All right, next slide, please. So this report, I've just gone over what it covers. Our latest report it speaks more to the latest trends. So what we have seen since tracking green tariffs since 2012 and tracking procurement of our members, we've seen an increase in the share of voluntary corporate procurement coming from green and clean tariffs. So we have another report that I'll plug. It's called our our deal tracker report, where we've tracked 143 gigawatts of corporate voluntary clean energy procurement since 2012. Historically, the vast majority, and still the vast majority, like 90% in most years, comes from what's called a virtual power purchase agreement. Those do not so that is a kind of transaction that happens outside. It doesn't necessarily have to involve your utility, your load serving utility, right? Who you get your bill from, your retail utility. That's been the vast majority. And those really can only happen where you have organized wholesale markets. So in the Western US and in the Southeast, now the Southeast still does not have an organized wholesale market. So that option is just not available to us there. So here. So as a result, we've been working very closely with utilities to develop next generation utility green and clean tariffs. And as a result of that work, we're seeing a much larger uptake in the share of large customers partnering with their utility and procuring clean energy through a program, through a tariff, or a sleeve PPA, as well as some sort of next generation one-offs where you may have a large company coming and announcing an agreement with the utility. Those deals with hyperscalers. We've profiled five of them in that report, but happy to talk about others as well. If you at any point, if you've got one nearby you that you want to chat about, there are a lot to choose from lately that we've to include in the report. But so just sorry to step back and frame this out to build on what sort of the framing conversations we just saw. There are a number of ways to procure. The ways that we're seeing that it's sort of innovation is happening and where the momentum is showing up is still in that VPPA market, but there's a growing share, a significant and growing share of procurement coming through clean and green tariffs with the utility. And there's a number of reasons for that. I would argue that one is that when you have customers that want to aggregate together and buy across multiple locations, or they want to move quickly, it helps to have the utility on your side. It can also help with accounting. And I'll talk to the bilateral clean for maybe more during Q&A. Next slide, please. So here's where we're seeing a lot of activity, and these are not like your usual suspects. You'll see like California is not on there. You're not looking at New York, these are the sort of like the hot deals that we've marked with the land, the sort of the map marker, and then the new programs at different utilities across the U.S. So the trend is this is not a red or blue state, or this is we're seeing these in very different across different political spectrum geographies, and momentum has really been happening. It's in my experience in the South and Southeast working on developing these, particularly with that Georgia one that I'll talk about in a second. You can see Georgia's lit up there that we worked on. Is that it really the green and clean tariff work with the utility is kind of provides a unique opportunity for customers and advocates and local governments to get together and figure out solutions, that work for everyone in the room, everyone involved. Whereas if you're doing one-off deals or you're working on a VPPA, you may not necessarily have to have the conversations that you would have otherwise, right, with your utility. And we recently had a win with Georgia Power, so that's why the state is highlighted there to create what we call the Beyonce Bring Your Own New Clean Energy program, which is an ability which allows customers to sponsor a project of their own, bring it to Georgia Power, and then put it onto Georgia Power's system so it contributes to the entire system of Georgia Power and to their load growth needs that we're seeing all over the country now. So it helps meet load growth. The capital gets paid for by customers, and then there's an agreement that's approved to the Utility Commission that that allocates RECs, gives credit for the renewable energy credits to the customer or group of customers. Customers can also aggregate under this program. And it gives them credit, and they get a credit back for the generation and the differential of the market price of generation of the energy from that facility. The agreement between the customer or customers themselves and the developer or owner of the clean energy asset is not touched by the regulatory process in this kind of a setup. So you can be very creative in procurement. I'm thinking things like agri-solar, right? Agrivoltaics, where you may have a farm and you may want to do, let's say, and we did, by the way, work with five local governments in Georgia as we were negotiating this. Atlanta, and Atlanta was a big leader. Savannah was a lot of help, but they were all helpful. But Atlanta was also very, put their weight behind this as well. So what this would allow is, so let's say Atlanta and a coalition of local governments, if they wanted to come together, let's say sponsor a 100 megawatt solar farm with agrivoltaics and a workforce development component. And so the flexibility allowed through this, where the customer is putting up the capital, sponsoring the project, designing the project, and designing their own agreements with the developer while getting that credit, that steady credit through the utility, allows the certainty or capital investment, but also the innovation that comes from the creativity of the customer being allowed to contract with the developer and operator of the facility in a way that we just had not seen before in any of the deep southern states. North Carolina has had a somewhat similar program, but it isn't quite as flexible as what we've just developed with Georgia Power. So that's one that I wanted to highlight for you, and because folks may think, Well, it'll be so hard to get a utility to agree to work with us to create a new program. Well, we were successful in Georgia, which is, often thought of one of the more tough markets to get clean energy programs through. And so I'm here to tell you that it's worth the effort, and we were successful, and happy to talk about that further if anybody's interested in doing something similar in their territory. Next slide, please. So, key takeaways that I want to share with you, not to scare you away, but clean energy tariffs are evolving rapidly. So, check out the websites that we have on our site. Also, check out the Smart Electric Power Alliance website. They have a interactive database where you can look at large load tariffs. I do not recommend that people try to track every large load tariff that is coming down the line. That would be a full-time job. However, SEPA has a good way to toggle through and see. And then whenever there's a new clean or green tariff that we think could work for our members, chances are it could work for you too in local government. So look at our website, and we're going to have a new another report with a full database that we're using AI to help us with later this year. But they're evolving quickly. Because of the large load conversation, the large load tariff conversation, and then this sort of like there was already a growing trend towards procurement through green and clean tariffs. So it's sort of taking off at the same time as you're seeing all these large load tariffs getting proposed. So, just want to say they're evolving. Many of them share common principles, and many of them share common principles, and it's really important that you get in early when there are large load tariff conversations, to start talking with the utility, start talking with your energy managers about what your needs are, so that the elements that will work for you, for example, rec accounting, additionality, do you want capacity credit? Those are things that you have to plant those seeds with your utility early on. They need to know what your goal is. What is your renewable portfolio standard? What is your carbon standard? They need to know that well before there is a tariff filed at the commission. Otherwise, you're going to be trying to undo a tariff or a program that's just not going to work for you, and that is quite a headache. So that gets to point number three, where early collaboration produces better, more durable outcomes. And just to give you a sense of how long it can take to get one of these programs through, for the Georgia Power example that I shared with a moment ago, we got an initial order from a commission in October 2023, IRP, Integrated Resource Plan filing, directing the utility to work with us on this to develop a program. Then we waited till an updated filing of the IRP. This is in the middle of the load growth, just surging load growth. So we were like, we have to figure out this solution within a year and a half, file that in the next IRP for approval, get approval in the utilities plan. And then 5 months later, we've got a filing of the tariff, the utility tariff and rate structure and contracts. So it took about 2.5, 3 years. And the program just went live last June, a month or so ago, to take on. It's 2026. We had this conversation starting at the end of 2023. And I would argue that this is, pretty typical timeline, right? For this development of these types of programs. So just all of that to say, and I'm not saying it needs to be a full-time job, but having those conversations early as they're developing it is just absolutely critical. Next slide, please. And I'll wrap quickly. Sorry. Um, so another key takeaway that we're seeing, and I think this has always been true, but it's just sort of more in bold case letters now, to underline italics. Bilateral agreements that you see in the news, like the Googles and the hyperscalers, those sort of flashy, punchy announcements about new types of deals that are being done, often end up becoming or providing key elements for what later gets worked into utility programs. So don't sleep on those types of agreements when you see them, or if you're in local government and there's a hyperscaler that's in your area, has an announcement that they've worked with, like NV Energy. I know Reno's talking later, or others. Talk to them about how they worked with their utility and see how that deal might help you get a program with your utility. Um, those really do inform what utilities are not only comfortable with doing, but they have been informing historically the way that programs get evolved and iterated. And so the sooner you get in on that conversation, the more likely it is you're going to be able to expand those kinds of deals to, say, for example, local government or aggregated procurement across multiple customers. Um, Another important point to note here is that clean energy tariffs, unlike virtual power purchase agreements, not harshing on them, they're hugely wonderful, successful mechanism. But clean energy tariffs and green energy tariffs do allow a utility to, if they're done right, a utility and the customer to say that they are making an impact where they're located, right? And so the trend within our membership at SEBA is not is it large customers, yes, they may have renewable goals, clean energy goals, and certainly carbon goals for SEC reporting, but they often have other goals too, like community impact, workforce development. They may be looking at other types of ESG or revenue streams. And so to be able to sort of faithfully say and show that they're show that they're having an impact in their community, a green tariff, is a very a complementary mechanism for being able to show you're having that local impact. Whereas with a virtual power purchase agreement, that is not always the case. Um, and then, if you are in a regulated utility territory, your best friend is your utility regulator. Okay. Your best friend is the person that's sitting on the board of your municipal utility board. Those are the folks that end up having to approve tariffs and programs. And so getting them in, doing a lunch and learn, whatever it may be, to tell them about your goals, what you need, and what kind of revenue certainty and capital investments y'all are willing to take to meet your goals is really important early on. Because that just goes on with the need for um uh early collaboration. And next slide, please. I think I'm going we can. Oh, well, the next slide, please. Sorry, that's from a. So that I will wrap it up. And then I think some questions. These are questions that were from the. Sorry, they're from the. I gotta get the right slide deck to you guys, but essentially, these are questions that I've asked my members when we're trying to figure out what's the next generation of a clean tariff, particularly now that we're looking at things like clean firm, storage, nuclear is coming up. What is the value in designing programs that address your needs? If let's say you've got, a need for clean firm, how much is that worth to you? Um, Looking at programs that have been successful in other regions is huge. When you're talking to regulators or your utilities, they don't want to do something new most of the time. Good news, there's plenty of examples on the SEBA site that you can use, and take, bits and pieces, have your pick of the litter of what your program needs to look like. And then when you're looking at the bilateral agreements with the hyperscalers, like I mentioned before, those set the tone for what's coming next in the larger programs often. So, what needs to happen to scale that? So, a hyperscaler's capital appetite is going to be probably a lot more, very different from a city of Atlanta. So, what would need to change to, thinking about the different constraints to take bilateral to a program is an important question as you start to see this more and more announcements, as you inevitably will in the next year about some of these bilateral hyperscalers. I'll stop there. I think that was a lot, but I hope that was helpful. Um,
Yes, absolutely. We probably could have kept talking about this the whole hour. Honestly, there's so much there, so much great information. And sorry about the slide updates.
no worries. I think my
Yeah,
slides are anyhow, we're going to go very detailed with like the ways to like pitch to a regulator, which is probably well beyond what y'all need because given that their group is not currently using green tariffs, just check out our
right.
website. We can walk you through. Do not get scared by the word tariff and the complexity of a tariff proceeding. Don't let it scare you. It's not,
I love that.
yeah, like
I
it's more simple than you think.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, and reach out if you need help.
Thank you so much. Okay, now I'll just turn it over right to you, Mikhail. Take it
Brilliant,
away.
thanks. Yeah. Hi, everyone. So, as a quick way of reintroducing myself, my name is Mikhail Sheriff. I'm an associate analyst on the consulting team at Resurety. We're based out of Boston, Massachusetts. For those of you that may not know us, Resurety brings together clean market insights and transaction marketplace all in one seamless ecosystem. We offer industry-leading market intelligence and portfolio management software, consulting services, and also the only regulated clean energy marketplace. We deliver insights to help navigate the clean energy industry, support decision making, and provide the tools needed to make all of this happen faster. We've managed over $1.5 billion in clean energy transactions. We've supported over 25 gigawatts of clean energy contracts, and all of this is working towards our mission of driving forward the energy transition and clean energy economy. We serve everyone from the largest tech companies to small buyers such as universities, local utilities, who might just have one PPA or VPPA as opposed to a whole portfolio. Next slide, please. Okay, so before I start talking about this, I'm going to be sharing some insights from our Q2 State of the Market report for clean power offtake. This is the most current one available and is backed up by proprietary data from Clean Trade. So if you're not aware, Clean Trade is a platform that facilitates as generated energy contracts and the transactions between them, between buyers and sellers. It's the first of its kind and is the only CFTC approved platform for such contracts. We're just shy of $40 billion in notational value, and I'll be referencing some insights from them throughout the portion of my presentation, and that's all based on real bids and offers posted by developers and off-takers.
Hey, Mikhail, so
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. It seems that we might be having a volume issue on our end. Any way to,
Um, let's see.
if not, you can just try speaking louder.
Okay, how's this if I lean in closer a bit?
Oh, that's perfect. Amazing. Thank
Sweet.
you.
Okay,
Yes.
how much of the previous stuff was lost there?
I mean, I was able to hear it. I think it was just people
Great.
were struggling a little bit, but I think you're good to go to
All
continue.
right. Perfect.
Great. Thanks.
So yeah, with that introduction out of the way, we can start talking about the topic here that federal tax credits have recently retired earlier this month. So historically, these tax credits have supported the build out of renewable assets. The way that this has happened is because these tax credits provided a consistent form of income for renewable projects, both through production tax credits called PTCs and investment tax credits called ITCs. This is low volatility revenue, either from simply building the project or from the energy that it is producing. The capital structure, as you can see on the left here, of many renewable projects, that big blue band in the middle is how much of that was being funded by these tax credits and what we call tax equity. Without that, you can see on the right, projects have to depend a lot more on debt and sponsor equity, meaning money that you're putting in yourself. Without that buffer of the tax equity, you're now going to have to find more contracted revenue to offset both your debt payments and any sort of initial investment. What that really means is that you need more contracted money coming in. That has historically come from PPAs or VPPAs and various forms of offtake for renewable projects. Without those PTCs and ITCs, those PPA prices are simply expected to increase. And one thing, as I've mentioned, is that a lot of the insights that I'm going to be showing here are from the Q2 report. Since the tax credits have just phased out, we are not going to see explicit effects yet of the tax credit requirements. That's probably going to be in the Q3 report, which we expect to release in October. So it's still a little bit early to judge what the exact effects are, but we're almost certain that PPA prices are going up as a result. Next slide. And zooming out a bit, I want to touch on sort of the broader scope of the market forces that impact PPA prices. So I have on the screen a definitely non-exhaustive list of those forces. So tax credits, as you can see, are just one of them. PPAs are complex instruments and they're driven by a lot of different market forces. So, for example, on here, hyperscalers, in a bid to support their sustainability goals while ramping up data center growth and energy consumption, have been procuring large swaths of PPAs. So, this simple supply demand of there being a limited amount of projects with a large demand for PPAs, as well as hyperscalers' willingness to really up the price due to their willingness to pay has driven up prices. Additionally, political factors, of course, play a role. Beyond just the effects of the current administration's policies and all of that, events like the recent Middle Eastern conflicts have driven up oil prices, which of course naturally brings up energy prices across the board and has actually caused an inflationary shock. As we know, inflation causes prices to increase across the board for everything, whether that's loans on construction for renewable projects, physical elements of assets, whether that be solar panels or inverters, or any sort of upstream effects, they all have impact on the PPA pricing. And finally, I want to especially highlight the regional impact. So, for example, falling solar capture rates. As more solar gets built, energy prices go down during the middle of the day due to an influx of low cost energy. That means that overall, as more solar gets built, the average price goes down, and actually your PPA price will also go down as a result. So overall, you can see the market is very complex and varied, and we're in a bit of a instability at the moment. So yes, PTCs and ITCs will almost certainly be impactful, and we know that's the case, but there's also a myriad of other forces affecting them, and also some negative forces driving prices down. And if we go to the next slide, specifically, we're going to be looking at ERCOT here. So as you can see on the left-hand side here, the ERCOT capture rates. So a capture rate is basically when your solar plant, for example, is producing, what is the average price of of the energy being produced. So as your energy prices go down during the middle of the day, your solar capture rates will also be going down. So overall, I think the takeaway here is that even though we see a lot of those forces being brought up by market forces, at the same time, we also see that local forces such as these capture rates are bringing prices down. You can see on the right-hand side of the table, the solar prices are going down, especially for operational assets. For wind assets, on the other hand, it's the exact opposite factor. The wind PPA prices are going up as capture rates are going up as well because those high energy prices are being pushed later into the day. And so the last thing I want to say about this is that the message on the previous slide still holds true. This is still just one of many factors affecting PPA prices. These are complex financial instruments, and you have to take a whole holistic picture of the overall market in order to understand where PPAs are going, and that requires a lot of data. And focusing on just one thing probably isn't enough to understand where your PPA is going to go in the future. Next slide. Yeah, so as we sort of zoom out to a higher regional level, we can see sort of this mixed market effect. You can see that in SPP, for example, we have seen since quarter 1, these are based on seller offers on the Clean Trade platform. Prices have actually slightly ticked down since quarter 1. On the other hand, in MISO, solar has gone up, and as we showed in ERCOT, the PPA prices for wind have also gone up. In the meantime, MISO, or sorry, in PJM, solar has gone down as well. So once again, without a distinct, broader understanding of the market, it would be easy to latch on to one factor. Like, say you're looking at those ITCs, or maybe there's some sort of local legislation. Yes, that's going to be impactful, but so are 5 or 10 different other factors. And being able to capture all of those things is something that's incredibly important to signing a PPA or VPPA and having a successful offtake contract. Next slide, please. And finally, I want to talk about some actionable insights. So on clean trade, we have seen the steady growth of what we're terming, and I don't think it's unique, but the operational offtake market. What this means is that projects that already exist, these aren't new projects, so yes, they're not going to have this additionality factor that a lot of people are chasing. That being said, these projects are in the ground, they are operating, they do not have construction, permitting risks, or anything along supply chain risks, for example. Uh, what they need is contracted revenues through PPAs, through VPPAs, and through any other myriad number of offtake options, as we've talked about during this webinar. What's important is that these contracts and the volume of these contracts in terms of the offered capacity, as you can see on the left-hand side here, are growing rapidly. That's because the fleet is aging, and as older contracts retire, new contracts have to fill their place. We've seen a 41% increase in operational projects. And this is a great opportunity for smaller buyers to support vital renewable offtake without all the premiums associated with greenfield projects. Hyperscalers are getting all the greenfield projects. We know that. But there are smaller projects and all of these operational projects that still need support. And I think that's a great opportunity for a smaller buyer like a city to look into. Specifically on the right-hand side, as you can see on Clean Trade, we actually have a significant number of projects that are not these massive 200 megawatt deals that you're hearing about. We have 25 megawatt projects, 25 to 50 megawatt projects. One thing I'll highlight, this is a public deal close to home for us in Boston and Richardie, is the city of Cambridge signed a 50 megawatt PPA. You can see that that group, 50 to 75 megawatts, is right in the bulk of the offtake that we see. These aren't going to be individual projects. They're usually tranches of larger projects in terms of their capacity, but still at the same time, and the difference between a greenfield and operational project, I saw that in the chat there, is a greenfield project is a new project that's being built for the first time. An operational project is a project that has been operating already, but is coming off of its original contract. So it'll need a new contract with a new off-taker in order to secure that revenue. And as I was saying, the amount and scope and breadth of capacity on offer that we see really supports these smaller buyers in a way that you don't need a massive contract. Those 50 megawatt contracts are out there, and these operational contracts don't have the new asset premium associated with them. Additionally, we know about the fact that multiple cities and municipalities are banding together to form effectively buying groups to facilitate purchases of contracts that maybe are too large for any individual city, but together they can form a much more cohesive and better product that will allow you to get that offtake when you need it through perhaps an operational asset. And yeah, to wrap up, I just want to say that, yeah, in all likelihood, a lot of these market forces and tax credits are going to push up PPA prices and VPPA prices. That doesn't mean that smaller buyers don't have an opportunity and are priced out of offtake. There are smaller contracts, there are operational contracts, and there are even greenfield projects that are definitely still up for grabs. I think that there's a great amount of opportunity here. And yeah, I really encourage you to check out some of the resources that we have. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. That was such a positive note to end on, and I am very excited to see the Q3 report in October. So thank you. Suzanne, it's your time to shine now. The floor is yours.
Perfect. I'll try to get through this somewhat quickly so we have time for some questions. My
No
name is
worries about that.
okay.
It's all good. Yeah, you can tackle that.
My name's Suzanne Groneman. I'm the Environmental Services Manager at the City of Reno. I hope everybody knows where the City of Reno is. We're known as the biggest little city, and if you've ever been here, that is very, very true. It's big, but it's not big. So we do a lot here, and we'll go to the next slide and just kick off. I have some pictures here. One of the things I hear from visitors is they like our wide sidewalks. So we have some sidewalks there. We have a solar picture there. We also have a lot of micromobility options in Reno. It's a little, Reno is small in kind of its downtown and midtown core. So having those micromobility options and bikeways and things like that's been really important to our community. Next slide. So a couple things about Reno. We're a LEED Gold certified city. We are one of, I'm not sure how many there are worldwide now, around 200 or so. We achieved LEED Gold in December of 2022. And then we've also been recognized twice by the United States Conference of Mayors. And in 2024, we actually won first place, and we won a monetary prize that we were able to give to a local nonprofit. Next slide. So Reno has also been featured in a magazine called The Municipal. This was when we kicked off our greenhouse gas emissions tracking efforts. We track our fleet, we track our energy use. We have a system that we use that we've used probably for about 5 years now. And we keep that system going. It's actually helped us win a couple of grants and things to just have that data readily available. It also allows us to look at specific properties. We pull reports every month and we turn them over to our M&O team, our maintenance and operations team, so that they can see significant changes in energy use and things like that. We look at month over month, year over year, and so that they can have that information available. Next slide. So what does environmental services do? So environmental services is myself, and I have a staff of one. We are in our community engagement and services department at the City of Reno. As covered in the bio, I oversee franchise agreements, all of our sustainability efforts, our environmental stakeholder engagement, whatever that might look like, presentations, meetings, things like that, our own operational efficiency around our environmental work, and then all of our utility coordination, including regulatory matters with the Public Utilities Commission. Next slide. So this, I actually saw Brian Beffert from Washoe County. I did steal this slide from a presentation that he and I did together, just to talk a little bit about the air quality issues that Northern Nevada faces. We actually were fairly close to non-attainment at one point. So I kind of try everything that we do here. I sort of bring back to that through that air quality lens, public health lens, things like that, because this kind of stuff should be data, right? Data-driven decisions. This should be important to our decision makers and our community. So thank you, Brian, for throwing this slide together for me. Next slide. So some of our early work to dive into where we started, and one of the things I want to share is that none of this happens quickly. If you see a solar project today, we had one yesterday, I'll go over that. That's taken years to get there. And so one of the things that we did early on is we did a study in partnership with the university to look at where we stand. And when I say where we stand, how much do we generate? How much can we expect from the grid at the time? What do we need to do to get there? And so they did a study for us, and we were able to actually isolate how much of our peak load we were reaching through all renewable efforts, whether it was sited generation, programs we were enrolled in, expected utility, clean energy from the grid, and then how far we had to go, what maybe could we do to get there. Unfortunately, some of the programs at that time are no longer around, so we did hit a little bit of a stall on moving some of that forward, but this was super helpful in us to help us understand where we stood, and then this paper actually ultimately got published. Next slide. So this is all of our existing solar in the city of Reno. I won't go through each one, but it's anything from sewer lift stations to parks to parking garages, buildings. They're ground mount. Some of them are ground mount, some of them are roof mount. We have some solar covered parking, and I'll dive into each of those a little bit more in the following slides. And we're also a Soul Smart Silver community. That was another exercise we went through to see where we were at. When we got scored through Soul Smart, we actually saw a deficiency in our processes and did change one of our permitting processes that we found was a little bit difficult on our community to make that a little bit easier. Next slide. So we only have one array right now that's through a utility partnership, and that's not a utility program. What we actually did here is provided space to the utility for a community solar project. We had a need in that we were moving around some soccer fields. We had some soccer families very upset because we actually got rid of some to build our new pool. And then the parking lot next door was just kind of a gravelly parking lot, right? Hot, no lights. So we partnered with the utility and said, hey, if you'll put in solar covered parking, lighting, we'll bring the space up to code. So we did this through a local program called a community-based solar resource. So we just provided the space. And that kind of opened up a broader conversation about where can we do this in other places in the city with the utility, right? We have the space, they have the need. And so this was a partnership project. Next slide. So our only owned and operated system, so not under a PPA, not under a utility partnership, are our current public safety center, which is a roof mount and a solar covered parking structure. This was actually when the project was under construction. It's now built. We also have a community center that was just approved yesterday by our city council. I'm going to go into that project in a next slide here. And then our next planned one is our central fire station in downtown Reno. And that what we do now is we just put solar into the design. It's not an afterthought. When we put it out to bid, we say we expect there will be solar on this facility, and they're just in our designs. Next slide. And I think we missed one 2 slides ago. There was the first grouping was everything we had under a PPA. So everything that I didn't highlight in the last 2 slides is actually under a PPA that's been around for some time. We actually entered into that around 2010. So our public safety center project, the one that I just showed a picture of, that actually started out of a study with NREL, and that was a study of the value of solar plus storage in critical infrastructure using models or financing mechanisms that are available to local governments. We picked an EPC model. So we went through a whole exercise with NREL. We went through what does that value mean to us? What's that monetary value, right? Like if we have the power go out for a prolonged period and we have evidence there, we have dispatch there, we have officers there, we have victims there, right? What is that monetary loss is what we were kind of trying to find. So we did find a dollar value. NREL actually ended up publishing that study. If a quick Google search, you can find it online, and you can see kind of the process that we went through and what our findings were. We then took that and said, this is meaningful. I should back up a step. What we were actually trying to do was figure out if that value could be used in an EPC, in an energy performance contract. State law is very specific on what you can put into an EPC. And we wanted to say there is a monetary resilience value that should be realized in those contracts. And that's what we were trying to get to. So we did ultimately enter into an energy performance contract with Amoresco. And then we used a city-wide park lighting retrofit to help pay for it. So we coupled it with upgrading all of our parks in the city of Reno to LED to realize that savings very quickly, and that significant savings that we could then move over into the solar side of the project. So we did get that built. That project was about 3.7 million. Yeah, 3.7 million for everything. That was the solar, the park lighting, everything. And then we got a $758,000 direct pay incentive that we just received about a month ago. Next slide. So that leads us to our most recent project that we just had approved yesterday. We are also doing an EPC on this, which is unusual because it is only one project. Usually an EPC is a portfolio. The reason we were able to do it under Nevada law on one site was that it is funded using sources other than general fund. So it is funded with tax incentives, rebates from other projects, and a grant. And so we were able to do a single site EPC for this solar project. So yesterday our council approved a project that's costing about 1.6 million. 800,000 is through a federal appropriation. 758,000 plus some change is from the direct pay tax incentive. And the remainder is coming out of our green energy fund, which is where we put all those other utility rebates, anything available to us on projects that we can get back, we throw into this fund. We've been doing that for about 15 years. And I tap into it anytime I need to do a small lighting project, maybe need to hire a consultant to get a project off the ground. We use that fund for that. In this case, we're using it to close the gap on this project. So yes, I did cover that we've been doing it for quite some time. It does take time, right? I wish I could say we just started that a year ago and we have this abundance of money in it. That is not the case, unfortunately. Next slide. And I always wrap up with this slide. I gave a presentation to some elementary school students. They had lots of ideas, of course. So I always throw in this your ideas matter, because I think one thing we're good at here is we just sit down and talk about what the possibilities are. We like to say, let's get to yes. And so I think that's why we get a lot of projects done. Our team comes together and says, how can we do this? And so your ideas matter too. So that's what I like to wrap up with. And that's it for City of Reno.
Thank you so much. That was really great. Great comprehensive analysis of all the different pathways that the city of Reno has pursued, which is quite incredible. I think we
And
can
I
go
say,
ahead.
sorry to interrupt, Lily. Suzanne, that's incredible, all the ways that you've done that. I having worked in government doing procurement, really, really. Next thing we need to do is get you green tariff, though.
Absolutely, exactly.
Sounds good.
No,
We can
that's
stop
incredible.
sharing the slides, Jenna. So sorry, Katie. We can stop sharing the slides. I just want to real quick while we're going to stay on a little bit to answer some Q&A because there were some things that came up in the chat. But real quick, while I have you, Suzanne, do you want to talk a little bit about the policy work that Reno's doing at the state?
So I would say we kind of have our fingers in everything. We've been quite involved in anything that comes before the Public Utilities Commission, any sort of decision making around these topics. I know that's some local governments kind of stay in the background, and I think Katie was talking about know your regulators. Right before this, I literally sent an email to a regulator and said, "Hey, I got to chat with you about something." So those relationships are really important. I would say stay involved. I think there's a balance between staying involved and being a little too aggressive, but stay involved, stay informed. If anybody has any questions, I know we're running out of time on any specific policies we get involved in, feel free to email me. Happy to chat about that stuff.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thank you all again. Really, really appreciate you being here. Katie, did you want to go ahead and answer one of the questions that came in through the Q&A?
Sure. Yeah, I think Brian had a question, and there's a couple others I'll pull up, and I think it'd just be easier to have a conversation if folks want to hang on. I've got time. Brian was asking about Brian Beffert. That said that Brian's it's a good question regarding clean energy tariffs. Is it possible to confirm that our potential clean energy tariff will result in new clean electrons on the grid, not just a wreck shell game? Oh my gosh, Brian, that is like the question. One of like the six, I'd say there's like six key elements I'm wrestling with every day as we're designing these. And top of that list is additionality and rec attribution. So, for rec attribution, it's a little bit different for y'all on the in the government side versus my members on the corporate side. But essentially, only because public policy may require you to go and buy clean energy and buy the RECs. Whereas for a voluntary procurement, actually, my for a member that has a voluntary target, so let's say to go get 50% renewable energy by 2030, let's say, and you're a private company, you can go out on the market and buy RECs, or you can go to a utility and work through a green tariff, do a REC subscription program. That's very 2012, not exciting to me. Or you can do like a sleeve tariff. What you have to show is that, but for your investment, that project would not have happened. It's that but for. That gets complicated when you start looking at utility integrated resource planning and carbon targets. Essentially, in those markets, what the way that we've addressed that in some instances is to say if the utility includes a green tariff or clean tariff program in their integrated resource plan, in their regulator approved integrated resource plan, and allocate some megawatts in there in the program tariff for customers who subscribe to, then a customer can faithfully say, this is my program. I'm going to put capital and I know I'm going to get the RECs. That addresses the additionality issues more. I mean, I'm talking in broad strokes. It gets complicated really quickly, but I mean, hopefully that makes sense. So it's got a program you can show, but for my investment, this wouldn't have happened. Then you can get it Green E certified or whatever you need. And that is absolutely critical for the success of a program. And I'd say early days, 4 or 5 years ago, I was talking to some of the largest utilities in the country, and they didn't even understand that customers needed to track RECs or needed to have attribution. So don't get dissuaded by having that. We're all learning together, and just anyways, please reach out if you need help. But that's the long and short of it. But that's why I do think utility green tariffs can be your friend because then you get that attribution back and you can get it back on your bill. You can see they'll count it for you, and it'll be part of your billing. Suzanne, you probably have something much smarter to say on that.
No, I didn't actually. I no, that was great. If you want to finish, I was actually
No, that I
recalling
think
the
it's different for us than it is for you. So I think it's better to hear from the way you all do it.
I was actually going to answer the policy question. I remembered the specific policy issue that Liliana was talking about, and that was that, and other states may have this, and so pay attention to your state laws. So if you're a local government and you go to build any sort of building, anything, right? You have to follow specific procurement rules that are set in statute. And in Nevada, those aren't conducive to building solar because nobody is going to give you a design for a solar project that can't bid it, build it, be there through the whole thing. And so the policy piece that we got involved in was we went to our policymakers and said, this is an issue for you want to advance solar. We physically cannot advance solar. The only way we can do it is through an EPC, which doesn't always work either. And so that's a expected change at the state level is for these specific technologies to have different procurement options outside of our normal public work capital projects procurement process. That was the piece, and I just remembered it.
Thank you, Suzanne. That's great. And if anyone ever has any other questions about that, please feel free to reach out to Reno. We'll be providing the PowerPoints, the recording, emails, all of that.
Can I make one
Any,
more thing? One more thing. There's been a
yes,
lot of
of course.
questions around Arizona. Look, we got a green tariff in Georgia. Now, I'm not out in Arizona. You can tell by the way I talk, but reach out to me because in more conservative states that don't really love clean energy or renewables, maybe you got some questions and all that. What a green tariff can do, it allows a customer to put the money up, build it themselves. It's not a mandate. It's basically a way for is let's say your local government say we got a standard, maybe the state doesn't agree with us, we're going to put some money where our mouth is, sleeve it through the utility, work with the utility, and all the utility commission has to do is make sure it's not going to increase costs for everybody else, that it's going to contribute to the system. And a utility plant program, I think, is a much easier way to get these things done sustainably at scale than doing one-off deals where people start thinking things got, there's been political dealing in the back, yada yada. So for folks in Arizona and beyond, holler at me. This can work for a lot of different markets. I'm in the South doing these every day. Okay, so holler at me. Yeah.
Right. Thank you for adding that. If we didn't get to your question, we can follow up with you directly. I do want to say that um, stay tuned. We have our final webinar of the series in September. It'll be on creative solutions for community-wide clean energy access. And with that, I say everyone have a great rest of your week and a great weekend. Thank you again to Mikhail, Katie, and Suzanne.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye, all.
Keep up the good work.